Hi, it's Christine with Moonshine Safari and
Anthony with Moonshine Safari.
Woo!
Yeehaw.
So just beware of spoilers. I'm going to start with that because that's kind of the big deal. So beware of spoilers. If you don't want to be spoiled, you should not listen, but you do want to be spoiled, you should listen.
Get spoiled.
Get spoiled. We are on chapter 25 of Outlander, the first book. And I've been kind of debating on how to do it. I think I made it a little too tedious by going chapter by chapter. So this is the last regular chapter we will do. And then after this, I'm going to do it in parts. And it'll go a lot more smoothly, I think. Had a great holiday, so I hope everybody else's holidays were good. I'm trying to get back into the swing of things. Okay, so the big thing is on the episode that is covered in the previous chapters, basically episode 10 covers the previous chapters. That was chapter 24, and it leads up to Claire and Galus being taken into custody. One of the biggest differences they have in that part of the show is that Claire sees Galus dancing in the moonlight naked, which is bizarre and weird. And I understand why, because she's got that witchy thing going on, but
for a druid.
Well, right, okay, but it doesn't happen in the book. I mean, that's
right.
all I'm saying.
Yeah,
so it's just kind of a difference. It's
They
true to the character, but
they needed the nudity.
they did. They needed her to be. They needed her to
All
be
the
just
shows
weird.
have to have that
She's kind of a
for
weird
whatever reason.
hippie
Stupid.
Scottish cross. Anyway, so that's definitely crossover thing. Also, the superstition that Galus has in the shows doesn't always translate the same into the books. But like I said, I really am a fan of the shows. They actually got me into the books, so it's good for flavor. Sometimes you just miss a little bit without the books. That's just me. Also in the show, Galus kind of impresses on Claire how much she actually does care for Dougal. And truthfully, in the books, she doesn't. She thinks Colum would have been a better match, but Colum is he's got physical issues and she knows it. And also he was married, so not interested. But it's kind of different as well.
Has that ever stopped anybody?
It's true. Also, in the show, Lyra testifies at the trial that we're about to talk about, but she does not testify in the books. Just some things like I said, that I'm highlighting. The Duke of Sandringham in the books doesn't have that weird duel that he tries to get Jamie to step into, but it does kind of show you who he is as a person, so it's kind of good. In the show, Claire actually tries to blackmail him because that always works so well. It worked out well with Black Jack Randall. Claire doesn't do that in the books. She kind of stays away from him for the most part, so that's kind of interesting. And when Jamie is called away from the castle, which we'll talk about in a minute, that happens in a different way too. So that's just kind of an FYI. Okay, the show kind of also just skips over the whole thing where Galus kind of drugs Claire to get some information out of her. So it's kind of interesting. But again, you can't fit everything in. So it's not like a criticism. It just is what it is. Jamie does warn Claire about not going with Galus. It's a little bit different in the books. Basically, Jamie is a really good judge of character in the books. It's very clear that he's super smart and he judges people well. He doesn't want Claire around Galus because he thinks Galus is just not safe.
Well, yeah, he's got reason to believe that. So.
Right, and he's correct. Exactly. Okay. So, all that to say what happened in the previous episode, and now we are up to chapter 25. Chapter 25 is opening with Galus and Claire. Well, actually, Claire is thrown into a hole. Magic. She doesn't know where she's at. It's dark, and that's because she was arrested at Galus's house. So what's happening is she doesn't even know who she's down there with. She can't see. It's pitch black, and she finally realizes exactly. She finally realizes that she is down in this what they call the thieves' hole with Galus.
A thief?
Well, yeah. I mean, she is a thief.
Hole.
And
in the show that they showed him in like the
they do
sewage?
Yeah, and they do. People like throw sewage down there. There's rats. It's disgusting, and they kind of throw a piece of bread down there every so often and give something to eat. It's pretty gross.
And if you're a fan of Claire's like I am, you feel really bad.
You feel really bad for her. So they're down there waiting for the judges and the witch trial. Yay! And so, or actually Galus says that her husband had said that the judges were coming soon. And so they weren't going to have to wait very long, which was good. She also makes the comment that they weren't expecting a witch trial, so they won't bring the witch pricker, which I found interesting. So that apparently they would poke the witch, and if they were a real witch, they wouldn't bleed or something. I don't know. So like these guys would come out with almost prop needles that didn't really poke him on purpose so that they could convict him. It's just such a weird thing. Anyway, Galus makes it clear it's a show. They don't, this is kind of a sham trial. They want to kill him. That's what they're coming to do. They're coming to execute him. Claire wasn't really the target, but she was easy pickings because she was at Galus's house. She was at Galus's house because Lyra said there was a note from Galus that Claire had to go, even though Jamie told her, don't go over and see that woman while I'm gone. And she did anyway.
Imagine that.
I know. Claire's in trouble. Anyway, so thanks, Lyra. By the way, Lyra also gave you the ill wish, Galus tells Claire. And so Claire's like, well, you gave it to her? And she goes, well, not really. I actually sold it to her. I mean, it's all about the money.
Yeah, I didn't give it to her.
So Claire actually explains how she had this whole theory that Lyra was pregnant by Dougal because she overheard this conversation between Colum and Dougal and all this. And Galus is kind of going, what? No, Claire, you misinterpreted the whole thing. I'm the one that's pregnant.
Imagine that.
Lyra doesn't like you because she likes Jamie. I told you there were people gunning for you that they liked him. So Claire's shocked that she got the whole thing wrong. But we're not. But Claire is.
And that's why she ends up in the poop hole.
That's exactly right. Well, Claire's like, I don't understand why you would do all this with Dougal and stuff if you don't really even like him that much. And
shut up, Claire.
It turns out Galus makes it clear that she is a rabid, zealous Jacobite. I mean, she is serious about the whole thing. No, well, she asked Claire, she said, do you really love Jamie? And Claire's like, she hates to admit it because of, Frank who. But she says, you know what? I actually do. And then Galus says this, and this is really important for later. In the books, Galus says, then it's possible. And then she doesn't elaborate on it, but you'll find out later. So spoiler alert, that's going to be important. So here comes the judge. Basically, Claire, in the books, nicknames the judges Mutt and Jeff. Mutt and Jeff are a comic strip that started appearing in newspapers in 1907. There's a short, fat one and a tall, skinny one. And she nicknames the judges Mutt and Jeff. So I think that's just fun flavor, personally. That's just my thing, so I like to point that out. And it really is a cartoon. At this point, they start reading the charges against these people, and they don't really have a lot that goes against Claire until a woman shows up and says that she had her baby in the tree because the baby was a changeling and she was trying to send it back to the fairies or changelings or whatever. And she saw Claire, and Claire interrupted the baby, and she never got her baby back. And so that's the first thing that's against Claire. The next thing that's against Claire is the man shows up that saw her when she saw Loch Ness Monster. And he thinks that that's a water horse, and he thinks Claire was calling the water horse. Now, the judges, Mutt and Jeff, they don't take him seriously. They basically go, stop drinking, and they kick him out of the trial. So that's pretty funny. They don't take him seriously. They take the lady with the changeling baby seriously, but whatever. And then the last one they have against her, and the biggest one, is the priest shows up. And he shows up and says, you know what? I was bit by a dog, and this woman tried to seduce me into her immoral ways and tried to get me naked in her private quarters. And when I said no, she cursed me by saying that the wound was going to fester. Well, she did say that the wound was going to fester, but that's because it was going to fester.
Well, of course.
It's even worse now. It's
Why
like
would
infected.
He have gone to her if it was such a bad thing?
Well, she and Jamie found the dogs on him and pulled the dogs off of him because they had a pack of wild dogs.
I see.
And then
that's right.
Yeah, and then she was trying to help him, and he was thinking that she was after him. I'm sure she was. Okay, Father being in a car, Scott, blah, blah. Claire spends all this time hoping that Jamie's just going to show up, but realizing that that's probably unrealistic because how would he know? He was out hunting with the Duke of Sandringham when all this happened, so he theoretically doesn't even know that this is happening. As she's hoping and thinking about Jamie, she starts to hear a horse, and she's hoping that that's him all of a sudden as a miracle. Turns out it's Ned Gowan, the lawyer. Ned is there to try to help in any way that he can. And so he actually, when he heard that this was happening, he left the castle. He came down to the town, and he's trying to argue for her benefit. And the way he's doing it really is stalling, because Ned is smart enough to understand that a lot of times it's about momentum, and people get emotionally worked up. If he can break that momentum, that's going to help. So he's kind of trying to argue, but he goes, what the heck were you thinking by touching that baby? And she's like, I was trying to help the baby. I mean, And he's
Right.
like, well, I'm just going to play on the fact that you're English and you don't understand our ways. And
Well,
so
right. That's what she should.
that's
She
what he's
did.
doing. Yeah. He does arrange for Claire to sleep in a better place. He can't get Galus in there, but he does arrange for Claire to sleep in a little bit of a better place, and she has better food. And so she's kind of better off for the next day. The next day they go back to trial again, and the judges decide that they can't determine guilt based on the trial that they've just had. So they're going to basically try them by water, which means they tie them up and they bind them, and then they try to make them sink. And if they float, they're a witch, which means they're going to kill them anyway. And if they sink, they're innocent, but then they drown. So it's a great option in either way. And you
Not if
basically,
you can sink and hold your breath.
well, for a long time,
That's
depending on
not
how long
floating.
they
Then
wait.
you
That's
just
true.
walk out. But then they probably think, oh, they can breathe underwater.
Oh, look, they can,
Witch,
right,
kill 'em.
exactly. It's
Yeah,
like,
you
it's
were
so
dumb.
stupid. And so they tell her to bend herself so that they can tie her up. And she goes, I don't think so. I'm not gonna help.
Well, yeah.
Right. And then so because she won't submit to that, they basically strip her and start to whip her because, that's the punishment for not
So they do groundless.
letting you drown them or something, I guess. I don't know. As she's getting whipped, finally, the knight in shining armor appears. Jamie's there to get her out of trouble. He's fighting his way through the crowd. He has a sword, but there are a lot of men there. So it's not like he's in a good position to fight, but he's willing to go down with the ship when it comes right down to it. He brings a rosary. He touches the rosary onto her bare skin and he makes her look up because the theory is that if she was a witch, the rosary would burn her. So when it doesn't burn her, they don't really know what to do with that. As no one's figuring out how they're going to handle it, Galus steps up and she says, Claire's not a witch, I am, and I was trying to get her to help me with my master's orders, but she's not a witch and she didn't know what she was doing. And by the way, I'm pregnant with a Satan's baby, and she shows that she's pregnant. So it's like, it's like the gasping, it's all that stuff. I was gasping. When she strips naked to show that she's pregnant, Claire notices on Galus's arm a smallpox vaccination scar and understands at that moment that Galus is also a traveler. So it's like a shock moment for Claire. And then Galus looks at her while she's taking the attention from everybody and she says, run. So if you're thinking that Galus is noble at this point, keep that thought in check for a little while until you find out more about Galus later. That's all I'm saying. Okay. So they run. Jamie doesn't need to be told twice. He slings Claire up onto the horse and they take off. There's a couple people that sort of make a token effort to stop him, but nobody really tries to stop him and he's not waiting around. So they go and he just goes into the forest, into the wilderness. He's just trying to get as far away from that town as he can. And so once they stop, he says, look, I got to go hunt and we got to get some food because he goes, I didn't come with anything to prepare for us to be traveling or anything. So you sleep because you're tired and I'm going to go hunt and that's what's going to happen. So she falls asleep and when she comes back, they start to talk about everything. And she goes, well, how did you even know? And he said that Alec, the horseman, the master of horse at the castle, as soon as he found out she got arrested, he rode out to try to get to Jamie. And then as soon as Jamie knew, he rode back to try to get to Claire and everybody's riding everywhere. Too bad they didn't have a cell phone. That's how he found out. And he says, well, I need to know now that we're away. He goes, I told you I wasn't going to ask you anything you couldn't tell me, but I need to know if you're a witch. And she starts laughing. She goes, of course you'd think I'm a witch. I'm not going to be able to get smallpox. I know things that I shouldn't know. Of course you think I'm a witch. And she's kind of hysterical about it, but she says, she finally just tells him. She tells him everything. She tells him about the stones. She tells him about Frank. She tells him about everything. And so he says, I believe you, but he's trying to be open-minded about it. But that's a hard thing to believe. Okay. So he just starts heading back to the stones because she tells him where she came through. And he goes, oh, that's where you're trying to get when you got captured again. And she explains yes. And so as she's telling him about everything about her life and everything and when she was born and everything, they finally get to the stones. She doesn't even know that that's where she's going. She just is just telling him everything and going wherever he takes her. And when she realizes where he's bringing her, she's shocked. And at that point, she's still thinking she's going to go back. And she says, whatever you do, you need to understand that the Jacobites are not going to win. And you need to not fight in this war. A lot of Highlanders are going to die. He goes, well, okay. He kind of doesn't completely believe her. He basically goes around to the stones. He touches them. It doesn't do anything for him. And so when she starts to walk up to the stone, I don't know exactly what they don't explain it, but he said basically she was going. Like, he could tell that she was going, and he grabs her back. They have some bomb chicka wow time because, heaven forbid. And then he tells her, okay, go. He goes, I'm going to go down the hill. I'm going to wait in this little cabin, and then I'm going to wait till you're gone to make sure you're safe. And then once you're gone, I'm going to head out. And she sits around for a few hours thinking about Frank, and thinking if she's going to go, because when she started to touch the stones, she could tell that Frank was there. She could have gotten to him. And she decides in the end to go down to the cabin and go back to Jamie. And that's the time that she finally decides she's not going back to Frank, bum, bum, bum. And that's the trial of Galis and Claire. And that's how she gets away. Like I said, reminder, I'm going to start doing it in parts now. So next will be part 5 of the Outlander book. And then I'll also try to incorporate what episodes it covers. We did have one bomb chicka wow in this one. But to be fair, she was kind of covered in muck for a long time. And
it doesn't matter for them.
It doesn't seem to, does it? It doesn't seem to. Anyway, so I hope that we're going to be getting back in the swing of things. If we're missing anything, please let me know. And thanks for checking it out. And check out our previous episodes too, and some other stuff. We got some fun stuff on Moonshine Safari, including some cool original songs and some parodies that people might like. So hope you're having a good start to your year, and check it out next time. Talk to you later.
Bye. Ciao.